Daniel, and talk about Nottingham Forest, because we know that June 30th deadline is fast approaching for them. How many sales could we expect to see before Sunday from the City ground?
Well, what we know here at Football Insider is that it looks like 4 is the number that they're aiming to offload by the end of business on Sunday. And it's absolutely vital that they raise that money. They do not want to take the risk of dealing with a points deduction again. Ultimately, didn't affect them last season. They were able to stay up even with the points deduction in play. But I don't think they can afford to do it. I don't think Nuno Espirito Santo would be able to or Angelos Marinakis for that matter, be able to handle it. I think Marinakis would probably lose it for the last time if there was a points deduction in total, even if it was merited based on the rules. And I know we could have a debate about PSR and FFP all day if we wanted, but the rules are there.
We quite often do, Daniel, on our podcast.
We do indeed, as we've all heard, and yeah, so I think this is essential. They've got to get it done, even if it's not something they want to. I mean, to be fair, I think in terms of the deals that can be done to hit that mark, they put themselves in a situation where they probably don't have to sell the likes of Gibbs White. Maybe not. I mean, they might have to sell them anyway if the players want to leave. Gibbs White, Murillo, and I know we'll talk about that in a second. But still, these deals have to be done. Otherwise, they could be in a lot of trouble.
Are there any specific names, Daniel, that they could try and sell to reach the £20 million mark? And is the feeling it's likely to be fringe players then, as you're saying?
Yeah, the names that we have are Joe Worrell, Lewis O'Brien, Emmanuel Dennison, and Matt Turner. I think Matt Turner was expected to leave this summer anyway. I think he very much sees himself as a number one goalkeeper.
Lewis said 20 million, and those players that you stated, you won't get 20 million for them, would you?
Well, the thing with maybe Matt Turner, I mean, I know he's away at the Copa America right now, and I think he's actually doing okay, so that could help his value. But obviously, there's not many days left.
They need to recruit in that area as well, though, don't they? In the goalkeeping area, I think they've tried and they've failed. I don't think they've got a top quality goalkeeper.
I mean, that's the names that we have, and obviously, if they think they can get that, I mean, then they could. I mean, there's always that sort of thing of maybe slightly inflated transfer fees, and maybe they're at a point where clubs are maybe looking to plug holes in their squad going into the new season, and those are players that they can certainly do that. Joe Worrell's been obviously a very weird one. He obviously had that big fallout with Steve Cooper, didn't he? So there's maybe an opportunity for him to get out there, and as a manager, I mean, one club he certainly won't be going to is Leicester City, I imagine. But it's one of those things where they have to get this done, otherwise, as I say, they're in a lot of trouble. Those are the names that we're hearing. If they can get those deals done and get out, past that threshold, then they can hopefully look to start building for next season.
If those deals aren't done, are they at risk of being lowballed for Murillo, for Gibbs White, for Hudson-Odoi, somebody like that?
You've got to think so. You've got to think so. And, Hudson-Odoi was so impressive last season. Finally breaking away from Chelsea has clearly been a huge thing for him to have that freedom to go and play. So, yeah, absolutely. I mean, those are 3 players who, certainly the best of the bunch in terms of the bottom half clubs in the Premier League last season. So, absolutely. And you could maybe see one of those deals happening, if not before the end of the week, maybe early next week.
To pick up on one of those names, Paul, actually, one name that's been definitely linked with the move away is Murillo. That sounds like a cut price deal could happen before that June 30th deadline. How much is he worth in today's market? And then from there, what could clubs come in at? If you're talking about lowballing, where could clubs come in potentially to try and sort of get a cut price deal for him?
Listen, I think he's a top player. I think he's a great recruitment from Forest. He's been a real success this season. I've been at the City Ground 3 or 4 times this year, watched them firsthand. I've been really impressed with him. Couldn't believe how young he was when you do your research, you do your stats. You actually, how inexperienced he is, but how experienced he looks when he plays. Nothing seems to faze him. He's really good on the ball. He reads the game very well. And he's one of these centre-halves that puts his body on the line. The amount of last-ditch tackles, easy for me to say, I'll put my teeth back in, that he makes. And actually, the blocks that he makes on the line, he's really impressed me this season. I think what they've paid for him, he was a real find, a really good find from Forest. And that will certainly bring him a lot of profit. I mean, ideally, they're going to be wanting 40 million plus because he's a top defender who's only had 1 season. If he's had 1 season, he's likely to have 2, probably 3 years left on his contract, maybe 4 the way contracts are at the moment. So he's going to have time left on his contract. Forest are in, obviously, danger with the PSR and FFP rules. So if those players that Daniel talked about there, if they can't get those deals for the so-called fringe players over the line, they run the risk, Forest, of being lowballed and having to take a lot less than they would want for a Murillo, for a Hudson-Odoi, for a Gibbs-White. And then they have to add up, then they're in a really difficult situation where they weigh up what's worse, losing one of the players for a lot less than they expected, or a points deduction. So if it's going to be a 2 or 3 points deduction for them because of the FFP, weigh that up against selling the likes of Murillo or Gibbs-White and the impact that they could have in the season going forward. It's not a nice situation for them to be in.
Daniel, we saw Marko Stamenic sign for the club and was then immediately loaned out. Do we feel this is a PSR FFP loophole, picking up on that point? And actually, how did the Premier League stamp out this issue, as we've seen in the Premier League, of clubs trading players that might not necessarily be worth what their actual valuation is?
I mean, in this case, I don't think that's what's happening here. I think it's a case of, because I think if they wanted to try and avoid adding to their PSR problems in terms of how much they spent, I think they probably would have maybe taken him on a loan deal from Red Star first with an obligation to buy. I think what's happened here is there's a player that they envisage will be ready for the first team maybe in a year or two's time, and it's a great option. Send him to Olympiacos. Marinakis owns them. It's an easy win. So I don't think that's what's happening here with this one. But on that general point, we've also seen this merry-go-round earlier on this week between Villa, Chelsea, Everton and Newcastle United, which is a very, very strange situation indeed, and has rightly, I think, raised some eyebrows. I mean, I'm only really speaking sort of from a fan's point of view, but I think fans of clubs outside of those four are right to just have a bit of skepticism about exactly what's going on here. I mean, we're looking at guys who haven't played a huge amount of first team minutes for the clubs concerned, who are suddenly being sold for upwards of £10 million, plus, even more than that in some of the cases, between clubs who clearly have to make sure that they are within the right numbers by the end of Sunday night. So it's a weird one, and also the thing with this is they're not breaking any rules by doing this. That's the key thing to remember. But it certainly is right that I think fans raise this issue, and I do have to wonder if privately some of the other clubs in the Premier League, the ones who are very much ensuring they don't break the rules and are trying to play fair, if you like, are speaking privately to the Premier League and asking questions about this, because again, rules might not be broken, but there is maybe a moral question around these deals that are being done.
You've just watched a segment from Football Insider's brand new podcast, The Inside Track, with me, Lewis Pearce, alongside the guests on the show. Thanks very much for tuning in. Please do give the video a like, comment your thoughts on the topic, and feel free to share on your social media pages. If you want to listen to the full podcast episode, click the link in the description below. Keep your eyes peeled for plenty more content and exclusives here on The Inside Track.